I did. And when we were kids, Legos came in a big bucket, and you took that bucket and you poured it out on the ground, and you took the Legos and you built whatever you wanted to build. You could build a bridge, you could build a house, you could build a skyscraper, you could build a pterodactyl if you wanted to. Anything that you could imagine or think of, you could build. Well, today, Legos don't come quite like they used to. They don't come in a bucket anymore. They come a little bit like this in a kit. This is a kit that makes an Imperial dropship, and the idea behind this kit is not that you can make anything you want to, but you can make an Imperial dropship. And in order to do that, you need to follow instructions. There's a set of instructions in the kit, and in order to make this Imperial dropship, you really need to focus on the instructions, otherwise you won't end up with it. And the net effect is, if you were to try to build a pterodactyl, people would look at you funny because, this isn't the pterodactyl kit, for example. You really need to follow those instructions, and so the net effect is the kit is made for one thing, it creates one thing, the instructions get you from point A to point B. Now, that's not to say that there's not a whole lot of thinking that's going on in these new kits. There is a tremendous amount of thinking, but all of that thinking and creativity is happening at a desk in Billund, Denmark at LEGO headquarters. LEGO headquarters, they have people designing these kits. And I use this as a metaphor for education because I think that with all the best intentions, with good hearts and good minds, educators, teachers, curriculum designers, etc., are over-engineering the curriculum. They're over-planning the curriculum, and they're surgically removing the thinking. The thinking is not happening at the kid's desk. It's happening in the design of the curriculum. And the kid, in a sense, when they interact with the curriculum, they're interacting with something akin to those Lego instructions, which are sort of paint by the number, step-by-step instructions. And if you've ever built one of these kits, you know that as you're building it, as you're going from step 1 to step 2 to step 3, you really aren't thinking terribly much. You're sort of just following the instructions. Now, why is it that we've gotten to this place in education where we've almost surgically removed the thinking from the equation? I like to think that it's because we like our facts like we like our chicken. And let me explain what I mean by that. When you go to the chicken aisle at the local store, you actually go there with a tremendous number of expectations. Those expectations include that each piece of chicken is sort of an equal size and an equal nice pink color, that there's the sponge thing underneath and cellophane and a date, that type of thing, and it's very clean looking. And the most important expectation that you have as you buy chicken in the grocery store is that it doesn't resemble in any way, shape, or form an actual chicken. It shouldn't have beaks, it shouldn't have feet, it shouldn't have eyes, it shouldn't have veins or any of those types of things. And this is, again, a little bit of a metaphor for, I think, how we like our facts. We like our facts to be nice and neat and clean. We like them to be packaged in such a way that we can do multiple choice or true or false on the facts. We don't like facts to be, debatable. We don't like facts to change. We don't like facts to be created in the way that they are actually created. And if you go and visit, for example, a scientist's lab or any place where facts are being created, where knowledge is being created in a sense, you know that, of course, that those convoluted, very difficult, complex places where people are struggling to tear apart, whatever it is, problems that they're working on, and to create new knowledge, to create new ideas, new facts. So the process to get to those facts is a messy process, just like the process to get to those nice pink pieces of chicken breast. It's a messy process. But we tend to like our facts like we like to buy our chicken, and that is we like them stripped down. And the problem is that our kids in the classroom are not experiencing the process. They're not experiencing the process of creating knowledge. That process, believe it or not, changing over time, is called learning. In fact, learning is equal to a change in knowledge. If you have some knowledge and then you change it over time, that is, by definition, the definition of learning. Now, then the question becomes, okay, if learning is a change in knowledge of some kind, then what is knowledge? And we know that knowledge is actually information times thinking. Now, that makes sense if you think more deeply about it. In order to get knowledge, we take information. Now, what is information? Information could be anything. But we take that information, it's all around us, it's in books, it's in, standards, it's on the websites, blah, blah, blah. And we take that information and we do something with it. What we do is we process it, we structure it in order to create knowledge. And that processing is called thinking, generically speaking. Now, if we take a look at this equation again, knowledge is equal to information times thinking. Well, information in a curricular sense, in an education sense, or standards, or whatever standards are being used, all of the standards are simply, believe it or not, information. And in fact, we like to think of libraries and the internet as a place where you get knowledge, but really it's a place where you get information. And then your mind uses thinking to structure that information to turn it into something. Now, when we study, my research over the last 20 years has been on thinking and knowledge and information and the different relationships. We're exposing what thinking is, because you can imagine if all we know is that knowledge is equal to information and thinking, we really don't know enough to do something with it, because we don't really know what that thinking process is. So over the last 20 years, we've learned a tremendous amount about what thinking is, and what we've learned is that it's made up of distinct processes that are incredibly universal, that no matter what kinds of thinking you're doing, no matter what age you are, no matter where you're from, they are universal to the way the human mind thinks. And those, we call them D and S and R and P because they stand for distinctions, relationships, and perspectives. And those four patterns of thinking, or structures of ways that we structure information, are universal, like I said, to all people. Now, you can imagine if you don't have the thinking, then it would just say K equals I. And K does not equal I. Knowledge is not the same thing as information. If you don't get the knowledge, then what you get is a change in information. And that change in information is called memorization. So there's a big difference between learning is a change in knowledge. Memory is a change in information. They're not the same thing. And most of what we're doing in schools today is based on memorization or changes in information. You can imagine when you type something into your computer, that's a change in information. You're putting information in. The computer is actually changing the amount of information it has, and it's changing its memory. But it's not actually learning anything. The thing that really makes learning is the thinking process. And that thinking and information together is what makes knowledge. When we use distinctions, systems, relationships, and perspectives, when we give kids new language and this new understanding of how their mind works to structure information, we actually increase three of the most important educational outcomes that we know of. Those three outcomes are deep understanding, high transfer, and metacognition. Deep understanding means that the kids don't just have the information they need to pass the test. They actually deeply understand that information and can structure it not only in one way, but in many ways. As a result of being able to structure it in many ways, to see it from many angles, that's really the description of real deep understanding of something, some topic or standard. As a result of them being able to do that, they have high transfer. We increase transfer. Now, transfer is an incredibly important outcome. What it means is that we can teach a kid something in one domain, and he or she can transfer it to another domain. The reason that's such a powerful outcome is because it's like a force multiplier. What it means is that if we teach a kid something, one thing, then with high transfer, the kid can teach themselves any number of things, 10, 15, 50 things from that one thing. So it's literally multiplying the effect of every single item that we teach a kid. High transfer is one of the most important outcomes in education. Finally, metacognition. Understanding that thinking, the way that the human mind works, the way that any of our minds work, is that we structure information based on distinctions, systems, relationships, and perspectives, is metacognition, because you have an awareness of your cognition. So we're not when we use thinking and information, we're not actually getting kids just to think. We're actually giving them a language of metacognition to think about their thinking. When you do that, it increases lifelong learning. It makes it more possible for the child to become their own best teacher, which is what lifelong learning is dependent on. So you can see that deep understanding, high transfer, and metacognition are the educational outcomes that we all want for children, above and beyond just simply the test scores. Another thing that might not be immediately obvious as we implement thinking back into the classroom is that when we structure information as an R&P, we get a lot of the things that we're worried about getting for free. What I mean by that is it integrates things like non-linguistic representation, Bloom's taxonomy, scaffolding, differentiation, all those types of things, and many more, are integrated into a lesson that uses thinking and the information to create knowledge using distinction, systems, relationships, and perspectives, or DSRP. So a lot of the lessons that you might see out there or even in the Common Core standards, they're going to have a separate section that says, hey, here's the Common Core, and here's how you might go about teaching it. And, oh, by the way, here's how you differentiate it. And here's how I scaffold it. And here's how we might incorporate Bloom. And here's how we might, do rigor and relevance, et cetera, or higher order thinking or lower order thinking, et cetera. With DSRP, all of those things are integrated into it, and that has a profound effect. One is it's integral, so the student gets a much more integral and robust understanding. But the other thing that's quite important is it's in the long run for teachers. They can do far more with far less, and teachers really deserve that, because they're being overloaded and overwhelmed with multiple frameworks that they have to implement. It's very difficult for a teacher to plan their lessons, because so many different parts are required of them to be used. And what DSRP does is it makes you focus on the most important things, information and thinking together, creating knowledge. A change in knowledge is learning, and these other things are embedded within that. That's really critically important. We talked a little bit about the tools. The tools of DSRP and the thing that makes it possible to use DSRP in the classroom, there are many of them. But on this particular presentation, I want to talk about a few that are sort of the main tools. The first one is what we call DSRP questions, or guiding questions. Sometimes we call it thinkery. And what's important here is that one of the most powerful for the last 2,000 years to educate and get kids thinking is called the Socratic method. It's made up of two things. One is literally just talking between people, and the other is a logic. And we need to update the Socratic method And what I mean by that is we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. The baby is the talking, humans talking, interacting, discussing things is still today one of the greatest best practices in education that exists today. But the logic of Socratic method is over 2,000 years old. We now know much more about the logic of the human mind and how it works, and that is distinction, systems, relationships, and perspectives, DSRP. And so if we change the logic, keep the dialectic, the conversation going, then this is teachers have at their disposal. And so we give teachers what we call guiding questions that's based on the same conversational style, but a completely new and research-based logic that gets kids to think about the content, the common standards, the common core, and to think about their thinking as they're doing it, so they get that metacognitive awareness. The second tool that we use is a really powerful thing called DSRP diagrams, actually graphical organizers around the DSRP logic, or the way the mind thinks. Now, we know that graphic organizers are incredibly powerful. We know this because the research shows us that NLR, non-linguistic representation, and graphic, one of the most important things for human learning, because we're very visual. We also know from the research that much of the existing graphic organizers actually lead to for people who use them. So we're actually teaching our students to make thinking errors by using certain types of graphic organizers. On the left there, you see a number of those types of organizers. The most popular among them is mind maps, and there's a tremendous number of thinking errors that happen in there because it imposes structure on the information. The classic hamburger diagram, obviously there's no hamburgers in biting, and there's no fish in arguments, and yet we use these sort of graphic organizers that impose a lot of structure and meaning that just laughter isn't really there. What DSRP diagrams do is they reveal, instead of imposing structure on the common core standard or on the information, they reveal the structure that gives that information meaning, the thinking that gives that information meaning. So these diagrams are very simple, but very, very powerful. The palette diagrams is incredibly simple. As you can see, if you can draw a square, a circle, a triangle, and a line, then you can DSRP diagram. And in fact, DSRP diagrams are used from the littlest kids all the way to doctoral students, and all over the country use DSRP diagrams. So they're very, very powerful. They're extendable, but they can be used in any grade on any topic. Now, DSRP diagrams obviously are designed to help you to draw and communicate distinctions, systems, relationships, and there are different symbols that are used in the diagrams, part, whole, or whether you're relating to things, or whether you're taking distinctions. We can give distinct because they're separate objects of part whole. We can add objects to the other objects. So that's saying, this box is made up this thing is made up of these parts. Use the little hash marks on the shapes to signify that we're looking at something from one or two or multiple perspectives. So it's a very easy diagramming process. You can learn it in 5 or 10 minutes, and you can be diagramming right away. Another point which might not be immediately evident when you look at DSRP and the tools is that DSRP diagrams and another tool called ThinkBlocks, which version of the diagrams, three-dimensional, tactile, manipulative, that's dry erasable. They're powerful tools for English language learners, ELL, and special ed learners. And the reason for that is that when we use these non-linguistic representations, we are appealing to not just the linguistic kids, because there is language involved, but also the non-linguistic kids, so the tactile learners, the visual learner. We have tremendous success even with ADD, ADHD, and on the spectrum of autism with these types of tools for that very reason. It's appealing to multiple types of intelligences, multiple learning styles. It has high differentiation and high scaffolding. And so as a result, we can appeal a lot of differentiation, different types of groups in the same room. That too saves the teacher a tremendous amount of time and effort. So let's dive in and look at the fundamental sort of thing that the teacher needs to do, which is to use thinking to we've done this all over the country. It's being used in many districts nationwide with great success. If we click on, for example, a standard, just one we picked, these are not chosen because they adhere to, we can do this with any standard that you pick. You could randomly pick a standard and we can diagram it because DSRP is a universal to the way information is structured. So we picked one in literacy and one math to show you today, but we can pick any of them. This one, literacy 5.1, is an main standard and multiple parts, and we break this down to a couple of diagrams. First is simply showing the red is the information, and the black structure is the thinking, right? So the thinking is structuring the information and giving it meaning. So right away the diagrams show K equals IT, knowledge equals information. The shapes are the structure, and the structure is what gives it meaning. So in this particular standard, what they want the students to really deeply understand is how to write an opinion piece. And in order to do that, they have to understand what an opinion piece is. So an opinion piece is basically a point of view on a text or topic. And that point of view needs to be supported by, related to by being supported by reasons and information. And that's it. That's basically what an opinion piece is. Now, the latter part of this standard, which includes, that's kind of the overall standard, the 5.1 A, B, C, and D integrated looks like this. We're going to look at all of this four-part process from a writer's purpose perspective. So the student needs to think about, what is my purpose in writing? And from that perspective, they're going to go through a four-part process. The first part of that process is to introduce the topic or the text. The second part, and related to that introduction, is they're going to state an opinion. The third part is that they're going to provide reasons, and the fourth part is that they're going to provide a concluding statement. Now, the standard also lays out some important relationships and parts that are also in the diagram. The first is that there has to be a linkage between stating the opinion and providing the reasons. And that linkage is literally words, clauses, and phrases, specific ones that are used to connect the state of the opinion to the reasons. Reasons are made up of details and facts. And the third little bit that the standard wants students to understand is that that concluding statement needs to be related back to the original opinion. And that's the standard in a nutshell. This is what we call anchor charts, and these anchor charts can go up on the wall, and this provides a structure, a scaffolding for the students and for the teacher for however long this unit lasts, whether it's a single day lesson or whether it's an entire semester. They know where they are in the larger diagram, even on any given day or week. They know what they're working on and why they're working on it, because they're trying to understand the larger structure of the common standard. Let's move on to the next bit, the mathematics. In mathematics, we take 5.0 and we're going to convert that to the first 3 diagrams. The main thing is that we're taking numerical expressions from 2 different perspectives. We're going to write about them. The second, that's pretty simple. Then what we need to do is look at the numerical expressions in terms of what are they made up of. So they're made up parts, and that 5th part, operators, is made up of 4 parts. And that's important for kids to understand. And then getting to the sort of meat of the standard in 5.0A2, we realize that the is about the relationship, two-way relationship between sort of the verbal calculation or the cognitive thing that's happening in your head, like add 8 and 7 and multiply by 2, the sort of thing that's happening up here, and the written expression of that conceptual thing, which is written 2 times parentheses 8 plus 7. And so what we want to do is relate those in 2 ways. We want to be able to take the verbal expression of the calculation and write it as an expression, and we want to be able to take an expression and interpret it as a sort of conceptual